Hi guys, this is Katie and today we're going to have a serious chat about why we didn't move to Canada. So I'm here in the UK at the moment. As you can see, it is absolutely miserable weather. It's now kind of October time and it's getting colder, but I wanted to come and have a chat with you about what happened and what's going on in life right now, because it's a little bit complicated. It's been a bit stressful. There's a lot, so let's get yourself a little cup of tea if you want to, and let's have a little chit chat and catch up. So to give you some point of reference, if you are new here, welcome, my name's Katie. I am an international school teacher. I work as a primary teacher and I have done in China and Thailand at international schools. And if you've been following for a while, you'd have seen that whilst we were living in Thailand, we decided to move and leave Thailand, and we packed up our entire apartment. We got everything in boxes. We have 15 boxes of shipping. We packed up everything. We left. We gave in our notice, everything, with the idea of coming home for a month in the summer to see family, because we hadn't seen them for like 4 years, and then move to Canada. And that's what we did. We did that. We came home, we gave our notice in, we came home, we spent time with family, we packed up everything, we got our, Canadian dollars out, we got everything sorted, and we flew. We flew to Toronto in the end of July. We flew to Toronto, and that's kind of where it went wrong. So there's a lot to this, and it's going to take a little while to explain, but basically we went on the IEC Visa, which is a 2-year working visa that you can do if you are under the age of 30. But if you're over 30 but under 35, you can go on the IEC Visa with something called an RO letter. Long story short, I went on an IEC Visa that gets activated as you arrive. So we went with that idea that I was going to activate my visa on arrival, and because I'd already secured a full-time teaching job, I was, according to the website, I was entitled to have my husband apply for a spousal work permit so that he could live with me, and we could live in Canada together. And that was the plan. So we were going to move, get his spousal work permit, get an apartment, live in Canada. And to be honest, the reason we had chosen to move to Canada was because we wanted to earn points for the express entry process, which is the process they have for you to then live in Canada permanently. And I had presumed that after a year I would have enough points to be able to apply for the express entry, and therefore we could stay. So that's kind of the background to this. We flew to Toronto, and I'm going to be honest, I've got some negative feelings towards Canada right now. So if it comes across really negative, I try not to be. I try to be a really positive and happy person, but it was a really stressful, crappy few months, I'm going to be honest. So we flew to Canada from Gatwick to Toronto, air transit. It was awful. The airplane, the flight first, there's no entertainment. Who puts a 7-8 hour flight on without entertainment? Anyway, it was rubbish. Flight was late. The whole thing was just a bit of a shambles. And then we arrived, went through immigration, fine. Went to activate my visa, fine. And I said, oh, I've got my full teaching job so that my husband can apply for his work permit. And they were like, oh, that takes a while. I think it takes a few hours. And I was like, yeah, I read online and I spoke to someone on the IEC website, on the ICC phone number, that he was entitled to it and whatever. And they were like, okay, well let me have a look at that, we'll come back to you. They disappeared, came back, they called us over to someone else 20 minutes later, and they were like, no, we're not going to process it here. No, you're not entitled to it. You're like, no, you're not going to have it here. And basically what it come down to was, it was beyond 5 o'clock and they couldn't be bothered to process it. Quite frankly, everything on the website would suggest that he should be having it. I'll be honest, I was really upset and frustrated, and we're from the UK, so he's allowed to have a visitor visa. So he came in on a visitor visa. I activated my work visa. We went to the Airbnb and we were just trying to figure it out. We had no idea what to do. It was incredibly stressful. We didn't have a Canadian phone number at the time, so there is a number for immigration that you can ring, but you can only ring it from a Canadian number. So I didn't have a Canadian phone number at that time, so we had to do that the following day. So yeah, it was very stressful the first day in our Airbnb. I was really upset. And then the following day, we actually had appointments to look at apartments, because that was the plan. We were going to move. There was some that we liked, and there was some that we were like, yeah, I think this might be the one. But we didn't know at this point if like when Callum was going to be able to get his work permit, you know. So we were stressed about that, so we did that. Then we rushed home, like rushed back to our Airbnb, went and got a SIM card, immediately rang up the immigration number, and we explained the situation, and they basically said he should be entitled to it. You have a full-time job, he should be entitled to it. People at immigration don't always want to process it because it's late and they don't want to do that, and it's a lot of work. And that's what they said to me on the phone, and I was like, what do you mean? Like, and basically they gave me two options. They said you can either apply online, but because there's a huge backlog right now, it can take up to 8 months. My husband's only on a 6-month visa, so that wasn't really an option for us. Or you can go to a border and you can try and flagpole, and flagpole is a thing where you go across the border, turn around in America, and then come back and then apply for it there. Like, we went down to Niagara Falls the next morning, and Niagara Falls is I know I talked about Pingyang Village the other day. Pingyang Village in China is my first favourite place in the world. Niagara Falls is my second, and it was so upsetting to, like, you walk across Rainbow Bridge and then come back to try and flagpole to get his visa. And we were standing on this bridge in this queue for like an hour and a half trying to get in. And there's loads of other people in our situation as well. And I didn't even want to look at Niagara Falls because I was just so upset with the whole situation. Anyway, we waited and then got seen, and they said he was entitled to it, but they weren't processing it today because they'd already done enough that day. They weren't doing any more. And we got there as soon as we could get there. We got there for like, so we couldn't do that. So then we spoke to someone else. There was like an officer, like an immigration officer. There was quite a few people that had also been rejected to like not do it. Not been rejected into the country, but like rejected that they wouldn't process that visa yet. So there was quite a few of us on the other side, like, and there was people in much more desperate situations than we were as well. And it was just a really like emotional, stressful, horrible time. And there was an immigration officer who came over and spoke to us, and we explained the situation to him, and he was like, look, it's not really the immigration officer's job to process them. It's not border control's job. It should be the immigration office. But because of, you know, there's such a backlog, people do this flagpole situation, and officers on the borders are getting fed up of it. But he was like, your best bet is to go to other borders and see what happens there and see if you can get it there. Guys, like, it was so stressful. We spent like 12 days in Canada trying to get this visa. So we didn't know what to do. Like, we went to other borders. They all said the same, that they didn't want to process spousal visas. It's not their fault. It's not their job. Go and do it online. And basically, like, there was more to it as well. Like, with the situation that we are in, we want to find somewhere that we can settle down and build a life together. We're now like in our early 30s, well, 33, and we want to like settle somewhere and be somewhere, you know, for the next 10 years. And it scared me that this might not be an option for us. And we spoke to immigration lawyers as well. Like, I don't want people to think that, oh, they just gave up. We didn't. We were in Toronto for 2 weeks, and we spent a lot of time talking to, we spoke to immigration lawyers, we paid to speak to like consultants, we went to borders, we spoke, you know, we tried to get as much information as possible. I have a friend who went through something similar, not in the same situation as us, but she did the IEC visa and then moved on to the express entry over in Vancouver. She was super helpful. Thank you so much if you're watching this. Amazing. She was so helpful, and she was like our little ray of like hope of trying to keep going. And it came down to just the fact that the fight wasn't for us. So yeah, it was a lot of stress, and we just realized that because of the changes that were happening in the policies as we were there, like, these weren't things that were talked about online before. These are things that we were finding out there and then that was happening, and we just thought, this isn't for us at all. Like, we don't want to fight. We don't want to spend years trying to settle somewhere that we don't know if we can actually settle in, pay a fortune for lawyers, and building a life together here, and then be kicked out in 2 years, and hope that it all works out. I think, like, for me, that was my biggest thing, was you hear a lot of like maybes. It should be okay. You might have this. Like, every time we spoke to someone from immigration or like either on the phone or at a border or anything, it was always, you should be able to do this, you might be able to do this, because there's no right or wrong. And it's always, the amount of times I heard, it depends on the officer that day, depends what mood the officer's in that day. I don't want to base my whole entire life and whether I stay somewhere based on how someone feels that day. Like, that's mental to me. I don't understand. Anyway, breathing. Long story short, we didn't move to Canada. It was stressful. I cried a lot. Yeah, we came back home and it was a mistake. The whole thing, and I think that's part of the reason I wasn't going to make this video, if I'm honest, because there's a silver lining. We are moving somewhere else. But we have the visa this time. That video will come next. But I wanted to make this video because there's a lot of people who make videos about moving to Canada online, and they talk about how wonderful it is, and it is wonderful. Like, I'll be honest, living in Canada was our dream. We wanted to do that. It looked great, you know, on paper it looked great. But I wanted to just kind of be here and talk to you about the reality of like the hard work and the stress that goes in to moving to Canada. And I think if you're thinking about doing it, first of all, you need to be under the age of 30, to be honest. And it's very, very difficult over the age of 30 to be doing it unless you manage to get PR. And I wouldn't recommend doing it unless you have the PR, because the visas, like we spoke to a lot of people who have gone on to study visas, paid a fortune, like so much money to get a study visa, and then not being able to stay afterwards. But online, it's very different. You know, people say online it's a lot easier, like whatever, but I just wanted to make this video just kind of more as a cautionary tale, perhaps, is that it's not as smooth sailing, it's not as professional, it's not as helpful as you might think it is. And this isn't me knocking Canada. Like, I'm sure we'll be back in Canada, like, to travel it. I love Niagara Falls. It's one of my favorite places. Wasn't a massive fan of Toronto. Again, it's one of those situations where it looks a lot better online. So there's a lot of problems in the city, as I know there are in a lot of cities in the West, but there was a lot of problems in the way of like homelessness and drug abuse there, if I'm perfectly honest. But that's a city, I guess, in the West these days. And for us, it's a massive culture shock because we came from Thailand, where everyone was incredibly friendly and helpful and kind. And I'm not going to tell you that I got the same experience in Canada, because I'd be lying. But moving on, cheerful Katie is back on. We are moving. So we are moving somewhere else. I'm very fortunate because I have a teaching job in another school. It's the same company, so I'll tell you more about it in the next video. But yeah, I've got a teaching job, I've got my visa, we're moving very soon. So hit subscribe for the next video to see where we're moving to next. And I'm sorry if I put anyone off moving. I don't mean to, but yes, we're off. See you soon, guys. Anyway, thank you so much. And also, one thing as well is, I know I haven't really been on the camera much because of these trying to travel vlogs. Thank you so much for all my subscribers. We now have 1,000 of us in this community. How exciting is that? It's definitely what I needed. I've been at home in tears for a few weeks now, and it's definitely just the boost that I needed. So thank you so much for everyone who is coming along on the ride with me. And if you have been watching my videos but haven't subscribed, what are you doing? Hit subscribe. Anyway, thanks guys. I shall see you really soon for moving.